Transmigrated as a disabled protagonist, how should I continue the script? Chapter 8, The Suicide Infiltration. The clinic now had 2 new freeloaders. Dr. Mori. That morning, just after Mori Ogai had finished his instant noodles, a frantic knocking came from the door, signaling that even during non-working hours, there would always be someone who believed doctors should provide 24-hour service. He hurriedly tidied up his desk and rushed to open the door. 10 minutes later, as he wiped the cold sweat from his brow, Mori Ogai said to the patient with external injuries, "Don't let the wound touch water. It'll be fine in a few days." Behind him, Tezuka Osamu was casually reading a book, while Yakimaru sat in a chair, expressionless yet radiating a murderous aura. The burly man, upon hearing the instructions, immediately wanted to flee, but after hesitating for a moment, he still paid the consultation fee. Is this enough? Yes, that's enough. Mori Ogai watched the injured man leave, then counted the cash before turning to the expressionless Yakimaru, praising him. "Yaki-kun, I suppose that's the right way to address you. Your killing intent is impressive, keep it up." Tezuka Osamu let out a mocking laugh. Every time Yakimaru tried to stand up, Tezuka would grab his left hand, preventing him from moving. Feeling his hand restrained, Yakimaru would sit back down, and then Tezuka would let go. And so the cycle repeated. The two seemed to be waiting to see who would lose patience first. In ancient Japan, it was quite common for names to have the suffix maru. Yakimaru was a childhood name given to him by his adoptive father, Jukai, while his formal name was the Yaki that Mori Ogai referred to. Such an antiquated name couldn't avoid sparking speculation between the two, as they both believed that the person who raised Yakimaru was a master at crafting prosthetics. The artificial limbs were crafted with such precision, perfectly fitting the human body, that it couldn't have been achieved in a short time. Mori Ogai tapped his chin with the cap of his fountain pen, saying, "I still don't quite understand. It's one thing for the prosthetic arms to function normally, but how is it that the prosthetic legs and spine can support Yaki-kun's advanced combat abilities? This defies science. There aren't any circuits or neural connections inside the prosthetics." He expected Tezuka to respond, but when he looked over, he found that Tezuka was completely engrossed in his book, oblivious to everything else. "Tezuka, what are you reading?" "A book." Tezuka Osamu held up the banned book in his hand, showing the title to Mori, The Complete Suicide. Mori Ogai sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Aren't you curious about Yaki-kun's body structure? This kind of medical matter is best left to professionals. I don't really know much about it," Tezuka Osamu replied, casually shirking responsibility. He waved the book in front of Yakimaru, and Yakimaru, sensing it, grabbed his hand. After feeling the book, he realized what it was and no longer questioned it. Tezuka Osamu told him, "Dr. Mori, my ability is to nullify other abilities, so his ability to move freely definitely isn't due to any supernatural power." This was a truly extraordinary puppet. Mori Ogai pondered, if we had better equipment, maybe we could detect energy fluctuations in his body. "Oh, good luck with that," Tezuka Osamu replied, showing little interest. "Tezuka, when do you have time to go to the Port Mafia? Based on Yaki-kun's hostility toward me, I'm concerned he might impulsively attack others." Mori Ogai raised a crucial issue regarding their cooperation. "Yakimaru's situation isn't something you need to worry about. I'll figure out a way to handle it," Tezuka Osamu said decisively, no longer intending to let Yakimaru act as freely as before. "As for the timing, tomorrow morning will do." Mori Ogai's eyes held a hint of amusement. "So soon?" Tezuka Osamu hinted, "I'm afraid if I stay any longer, your clinic might have to close down by tomorrow." The Sheep King, Nakahara Chuya, was full of rage, waiting to unleash it. Even if his opponent were a fool, it wouldn't take more than a day for him to track down the unfortunate enemy responsible for his troubles. Mori Ogai said, "Are you referring to the Sheep King? That poor gravity manipulator, stabbed in the back by his own people." After the sheep split, they had to rely on the armed organization GSS, leaving behind a group of defenseless children for him to care for. I heard all of this happened shortly after Dazai-kun joined the sheep. Dazai Osamu flatly denied it. That was clearly the fault of that reckless little shorty's incompetent leadership. If he can't even manage his own organization, how could you blame someone like me, who is just temporarily staying with them? Except for the enraged Nakahara-chuya, no one would have guessed that the one who incited Shirase, drew GSS's attention to the sheep, and ultimately caused the organization to splinter was none other than a boy not even 14 years old. Muddy filth dealing with muddy filth. He didn't kill anyone, nor did he have the intent to harm. His only goal was to utterly disgust Nakahara-chuya. Even so, in Yakimaru's eyes, Dazai Osamu's soul remained untarnished by evil. He was clean, a person who didn't care about good or evil, only wanting to witness the brilliance of human nature. Dazai Osamu still retained the pure heart of a child. To this day, he had yet to truly take that step beyond the line dividing black and white. Mori Ogai, having seen enough, maintained a calm expression. Let's put your personal matters aside for now. The person who just left won't reveal anything about seeing you and Yaki-kun at the clinic. Dazai Osamu was slightly surprised. What did you do to him? Before officially entering the port mafia, he couldn't afford to expose his connection with Dr. Mori. Mori Ogai only smiled without answering. Dazai Osamu didn't press further, letting his mind run through various possibilities, but in the end, his thoughts dissipated as Yakimaru once again made a move to stand up. Dazai Osamu held him down, noticing that Yakimaru was becoming inexplicably restless. Mori Ogai bluntly revealed the truth. Dazai-kun, you can't mistreat him like this. He probably needs to use the restroom. Dazai Osamu froze. Dororo, I won't go far, but I need to take care of my bodily needs. Yakimaru, feeling quite helpless, thought. Just a few meters away was a villain among villains, and yet the Dororo, by his side wouldn't let him go and fight. Instead, he was stuck here, doing nothing. Although his endurance was remarkable, and he lacked the nerves for pain or touch, that didn't mean he didn't have the same basic needs as an ordinary person, such as eating and relieving himself. On the contrary, his physiological issues often left him feeling deeply perplexed. For instance, during his childhood, Jukai practically raised him through numerous incidents involving both waste and urine, which shattered his self-esteem early on. As a result, Yakimaru had learned to face the harshness of life with calm acceptance. When his hand was released, Yakimaru didn't immediately head out. Feeling uneasy, he wanted to bring her along with him. This place was too dangerous. After Mori Ogai pointed out where the restroom was, Dazai Osamu simply pushed Yakimaru towards it, with neither of them needing to find a secluded corner outside. Yakimaru refused to relieve himself under Dazai Osamu's watchful eyes, but Dazai merely pouted and said, I've already seen all of you. Walking a few steps away, Dazai Osamu went to the mirror to adjust the bandages, making sure he would look perfect when heading out. Yakimaru quickly finished and returned, standing silently behind him like a ghost. Dazai Osamu stood on his tiptoes, not quite satisfied. He is a little shorter than Yakimaru, but it was all because the other's legs were too long. If they could be replaced, he would definitely make sure they were shorter. Yakimaru, Dazai Osamu smiled at him sincerely, thinking about the next plan. We're about to walk into a den of villains. Any wrong move from you could get me killed in the port mafia. Isn't that thrilling? I'm super excited to see what you'll do next. His voice lowered, lacking the intimidation of an adult. Don't disappoint me. Dororo. Yakimaru, following old habits from a past life, didn't like lingering near the restroom for too long. Calculating how much time they had spent together, he nudged Dororo. A completely energized Dazai Osamu? I'm watching, you go take care of your business, don't get constipated. Pushed toward a wall, Dazai Osamu stood there with a puzzled expression. He turned around to see Yakimaru purposely facing away from him. Dazai wished he hadn't understood Yakimaru's intentions. Alright, it seemed Yakimaru sometimes had a bit too much of a protective instinct toward him. Morning. Under a bright sky with warm sunlight and clear weather, Dazai Osamu joyfully dragged Yakimaru to jump into the sea. 2 splashes echoed across the waters of Yokohama's port. In that moment, Yakimaru's survival instinct kicked in, and he started trying to save himself, his hands frantically moving through the water. Dazai Osamu tightly clung to the struggling Yakimaru, resting his head against his neck, his face showing a hazy fascination with death, along with the excitement of attempting suicide together with Yakimaru. Don't think about escaping, just obediently die with me. Under Dazai Osamu's twisted amusement, another voice took root even deeper in his heart. Give up. You haven't even taken a real look at this world, why would you like it? After you die, maybe you'll go to heaven. As for me, going to hell might not be so bad. Unlike Dazai, Yakimaru had not given up on the hope of survival. He kept trying to bring both of them back to the surface. In Yakimaru's understanding, he believed that he and Dororo had fallen into the water. Dororo, terrified to the extreme, was clinging to his body, preventing him from swimming properly. No. He couldn't continue like this. He was Yakimaru, the one destined to slay the 12 demon gods, how could he fail here? The life flame within Yakimaru surged, burning brightly. The remnants of the demon god's power intertwined with another strange force that had been within him since birth. In an indescribable surge of energy, it erupted from him, with Yakimaru at its center. No one can kill the one fated to vanquish the demon gods, Yakimaru. The deeply hidden lore of the world of Dororo was, for the first time, revealed through Yakimaru. Dazai Osamu watched in disbelief as a large school of fish swarmed toward them, circling around them. The sound of a steam whistle and waves of gasps from the crowd on the surface echoed through the air. It was as if all the forces of nature were coming to Yakimaru's rescue. The buoyancy beneath his feet made Dazai Osamu realize that his idea had failed. Yet, the plan hadn't failed. Dazai discreetly let out a few bubbles, feeling the surging life force from within Yakimaru's battered body. For a moment, he realized that Dr. Mori hadn't been wrong. This was the miracle of life bursting forth with extraordinary vitality. The two were fished out and rescued by some low-ranking members of the port mafia from a passing ship. Thus, Dazai Osamu and Yakimaru entered a place filled with a crimson glow. Surrounded by villains? In his dazed and shocked state, Yakimaru felt like he had fallen into a den of bandits. Before he could even unleash his killing intent, his body was restrained, his hands bound tightly with handcuffs, leaving him severely confined. Dazai Osamu didn't fare much better, though his frail and delicate appearance, along with his young age, gave the port mafia members the impression that he had been under Yakimaru's constant protection. Weakly, he said, "We were being chased by the Sheep King of Suribachi Street and had no choice but to jump into the sea, seeking help from the port mafia. Who says a legendary leap can only be made once? Doing it twice is just right." On the run from the pursuing the Sheep King Nakahara, who had a slew of curses ready to hurl his way, Dazai Osamu managed to sneak into the port mafia with Yakimaru in tow. He even successfully met the aging leader of the port mafia, skillfully remaining under the radar with a plan quietly hatched between him and Mori Ogai to stay at the port mafia headquarters. Yakimaru, with a heavy heart, watched as the flames of evil surrounded Dororo, feeling a deep, painful helplessness. "I'm too weak. I can't protect her." "Don't be so upset," came Dazai's reassuring voice. In the monitored room, Dazai Osamu, sensing Yakimaru's growing resistance and silence, tried to comfort him. However, anyone listening would certainly want to throttle him. "The one who should truly be upset is me. I survived under your protection but couldn't achieve my wish of leaving behind this puppet and dying alone." The port mafia executive, who was watching them, was startled upon hearing this and remarked, "Does this guy have suicidal tendencies?" Following that, Dazai Osamu's hidden tendencies were quickly reported. With the port mafia's capabilities, they soon uncovered Dazai Osamu's repeated suicide attempts within Yokohama. The leader of the port mafia, upon hearing these strange occurrences one after another, couldn't help but develop an interest in Dazai Osamu. This brat, is he really seeking to submit to us? The old man on the bed coughed, gripping the edge of the bed as he tried to sit up. He was rescued by the port mafia during one of his suicide attempts. His desire not to live is genuine, but perhaps he wanted to ensure someone else survives instead. Ah, I'd actually like to meet that disabled young man. Mori Ogai advised. He's unable to speak. The old man, his eyes clouded with age, looked at him and asked, mute? As a doctor who had also examined both Dazai Osamu and Yakimaru, Mori Ogai replied with full confidence, yes, he has no eyes, no nose, no tongue, no ears, and even no hands or legs. The violent-natured old man's breath suddenly became irregular, shocked by this revelation. I don't believe it. Boss, you can send a subordinate to investigate. Mori Ogai sincerely suggested the idea, not intending to scare the port mafia leader into developing any bad habits from shock. That was far from being a beautiful puppet, it was more like a demon child. At the port mafia headquarters, the officer in charge of interrogations, Ozaki Koyo, was tasked with investigating the situation. After knocking, she entered the room and immediately saw Dazai Osamu snoring away, fast asleep, while Yakimaru sat motionless on the edge of the bed, so silent and still that it was as if no life remained in him. Yakimaru's arm slightly moved, but from under the covers, a hand quickly grabbed his, playfully saying, Yakimaru, don't be so harsh on such a beautiful auntie. Ozaki Koyo smiled faintly. Auntie? She was only about 3 years older than the two of them. Dazai Osamu, successfully waking up from his nap, rubbed his eyes and sat up. May I ask why someone from the port mafia has come to see us? Has your boss agreed to call off the pursuit? Ozaki Koyo replied, I'm here at the boss's request to examine someone's body. Dazai Osamu blinked. And after the examination, will you take responsibility for him? Ozaki Koyo chuckled lightly. No. In just a few brief exchanges, Yakimaru found himself sold. He tried to pull his hand away, but in his haste, he accidentally detached his arm, exposing a gleaming blade that instantly put Ozaki Koyo on alert. Seizing the moment, Dazai Osamu casually pulled off Yakimaru's ear and showed it to Ozaki Koyo. Seeing the boy's body, one missing part after another, Ozaki Koyo's expression remained calm, though the shock she felt inside was undeniable. Yet, she still had to complete the final task as ordered by her boss. Remove his mask. I need to examine his face. That's an easy way to invite nightmares, you know. Dazai Osamu, leaning against Yakimaru from behind, tightly restrained him. With one hand, he removed the mask, but he didn't look directly at Yakimaru's face. Instead, he smiled at the beautiful female officer, watching her reaction. This is humanity, capable of pity, fear, and easily swayed by appearances, clouding their judgment. Yakimaru didn't need anyone's sympathy. So close. Yakimaru noticed that Dororo's life flame was about to overlap with his own. From an ordinary person's perspective, it probably looked like Dororo was actively embracing him. Does he not want me to fight? The black-haired boy's bone-chilling killing intent gradually faded. This was partly due to the diminished red aura around Ozaki Koyo, not as exaggerated as Mori Ogai's. Ozaki Koyo didn't manifest her ability, Golden Demon, and with a complex expression, she said, he really trusts you. Dazai Osamu's expression remained calm, uninterested. Of course he trusts me, I'm the one who raised him. Letting out a soft, displeased hum, Ozaki Koyo coldly remarked as she left the room, brat, don't betray that trust. You won't be able to repay it. What could drive someone blind, deaf, and mute to place such life and death trust in another? You live inside his soul. It's a bond so deep it would make anyone envious. Chapter 8 End.